This episode of The Old Man of the Three is presented by BMW. Don't settle for good when you can have the ultimate. BMW, the ultimate driving machine. Welcome to The Old Man of the Three with JJ Redick and Tommy Alter, brought to you by 342 Productions. This is episode 245, Jamal Crawford. Jamal, of course, is a former teammate, a dear friend, a wonderful human being, and has really established himself early in his media career as a star. Guy just has a great wit about him. He's got a great cadence. He's intelligent. He sees the game. I've really enjoyed listening to, watching Jamal in his roles with Turner Sports over the last couple of basketball seasons. And it's always good to have a friend on the podcast. We get into a ton of stuff related to the NBA Finals, of course, but then we kind of riff as friends do. Before we get to Jamal, I do want to get to our DraftKings Sportsbook segment, and of course, it is about the Boston Celtics. Boston Celtics up 3-0 now on the Dallas Mavericks. I called the game last night in Dallas, and Jamal and I talk about this, but to me, this Celtics team and the way they're constructed and the difficulty with which you have to play to beat them, they are, I don't know where they rank in the all-time greats, but they're one of the best NBA. If they go on to win this championship and close out the Dallas Mavericks, I should say that, of course, but if they go on to win this championship, this season, this team, as I've been saying for the last few months, when everybody brings up the past few Celtics teams, this team is one of the all-time best teams. They are. There's numbers that back that up. There's the record that backs it up. There's this playoff run that they're on right now that backs it up. But what I love about them is the team, and whether it's been Derrick White, Jrue Holiday making plays, Jayson Tatum as a playmaker, setting up his teammates, his rebounding, as it always is in the playoffs, has been outstanding. And Jaylen Brown just establishing himself at different times as the go-to guy. And I am lucky in my role as a broadcaster that I get to interview coaches. I'm lucky in this role as a podcaster that I get to interview players. During the finals, we have been able to interview players from both teams before the day before games. And what stands out to me is how connected this group is. What stands out to me is how much they genuinely enjoy and like each other. You listen to them talk about their teammates. You listen to them talk about the group, and they got something special, man. And it's really awesome to watch. Now, why do I bring this up? Let's assume, because it's never happened before, but I'm not saying it never will, but let's assume the Boston Celtics go on to win this year's NBA championship. The odds are already up for next year. They are already the favorites for next year's NBA championship at plus 280, Denver at plus 700, Oklahoma City at plus 800, Minnesota, Milwaukee at plus 850, and Dallas at plus 900. Why do I bring this up? Because this group, this core group, they're going to be back together next year. The biggest uncertainty probably is Derrick White's potential extension going into a contract year. I mean, you're going to run into there's some financial implications, of course, in terms of the second apron. But you would assume they bring this group back. And, I think it was Tatum today just talking about how everybody is at the right stage of their career for this group to work. There's the maturity. The guys are not in free agent years. Guys have had the failures. They've tasted success like Jrue Holiday, and they can help with the leadership. So across the board, it's just been a terrific group to watch as a basketball fan. You don't have to be a Celtics fan. I'm not a Celtics fan. I'm a basketball fan. I have enjoyed watching this group. And if they do go on to win the NBA championship this year, they are the favorites once again next year, going into what always promises to be a interesting draft and free agency season for the NBA. This has been our DraftKings Sportsbook segment. We are this close to crowning an NBA champ, and with the action heating up on the court, it's even hotter at DraftKings Sportsbook, an official sports betting partner of the NBA. Download the DraftKings Sportsbook app now and use code JJ. That's code JJ for new customers to get a no-sweat bet up to $1,500 if your first bet doesn't hit. Only on DraftKings. The crown is yours. Gambling problem? Call 1-800-GAMBLER, or in West Virginia, visit www.1800gambler.net. In New York, call 877-8-HOPE-NY or text HOPE-NY 467-369. In Connecticut, help is available for problem gambling. Call 888-789-7777 or visit ccpg.org. Please play responsibly. On behalf of Boot Hill Casino and Resort in Kansas, 21 plus, age varies by jurisdiction. Void in Ontario. One no-sweat bet per new customer. Issued as one bonus bet based on amount of initial losing bet. Bonus bets expire 168 hours after issuance. See dkng.co/bball for eligibility, wagering, and deposit restrictions, terms, and responsible gaming resources. Let's get to our conversation with my dear friend, Jamal Crawford. Fam, what's good? I just finished broadcasting Game 3 of the NBA Finals. I'm a working man. I'm a working man, Jamal. I'm a working man. How are you, my friend?
I'm great, bro. How are you? You're the busiest man in I don't even want to say show. You're the busiest man in show business right now, bro. Like, how are you?
I'm good. Like, honestly, there's things that come across your life,
yes,
that are opportunities,
for sure,
and you can't say no, right?
You cannot say no.
Do you want to do a podcast with LeBron James? Yeah, I do. Do you want to call the NBA Finals? Yeah, right. I do.
Like, stuff you don't even plan for, just the roots have been planted and the branches just grow. It's been dope to see, though. This is our first conversation on record since we've both been in media.
That's where I was going first, because I have always said this to you, and I know that you dabbled a little bit,
yes,
but because of time and commitment, you didn't want to do it necessarily full time. But I've always told you would be phenomenal in media. How was this year? And just in terms of the differences between studio and calling games, I thought you were phenomenal in the playoffs when you got to call games. I'm so happy for you, dude. How was this experience for you?
It's been unbelievable. And just going back a little bit, when you saw it early, I wasn't in the mind space. Like, I'm like, I want to play. I'm coaching now. Like, oh, media is not my thing. So I did not think this would be what it's become. I thought, honestly, I'd be in the front office. I'd be, and then I found out how hard they work. I'm like, hell no, I'm coaching my son. I'm not doing it. But it's been incredible because once I got in it, like anything, we're competitive. We want to be really good at it. And I've learned so much over the last 2 years. I've had great teammates in studio with Shaq, Candace, and Lefko. And then, like, to be able to sidestep and pivot, so to speak, to calling games. I'm with Kevin Harlan and Reggie Miller, like the voices of the game. They've been around forever. You can remember with so many iconic moments. I was nervous to actually work with them because they've been around for so long. But then they were so gracious and so welcoming. Allie LaFleur, they were great. And I got bit by that bug. And I'm like, man, I'm literally watching the game as if I'm sitting on the couch. And I got lost in the game. So I just had a ball.
It's interesting you bring up, calling games with Kevin and Reggie. And Reggie obviously is a Hall of Fame NBA basketball player, but also a legendary broadcaster.
Sure.
And I think what's cool for us is we played in an era where all of these people called our games.
Yes, they did.
And so we watch games of our opponents, or, a big Saturday night game that we're not playing in. We see them at the arena. We rewatch our own games, and we hear them talking about us and our teams. And so they become so ingrained in our lives. And I remember, dude, Mike Breen, at one point, we were in MSG. This was probably on the latter half of my career. I was probably either with the Clippers or with Philly. And I remember him saying, can't wait for you to come work with us someday. Now, did I think I would call a finals game with him? No, but I think there's something really cool for us about getting to call games with broadcasting legends that called our games.
It's something that's because they've been the backdrop. They've been the soundtrack to our basketball lives, even before we were actually playing in the NBA, right? Like, we've heard these voices. I remember Kevin Harlan doing that Kobe dunk when he went baseline and did that reverse against Minnesota. And he said, Kobe Bryant I forgot exactly what he said, but it was like, I remember hearing that and what I felt at that moment and sitting next to him and hearing his voice right there while we're watching the same game and him being so gracious and Reggie Miller, putting his twist on things. It's like, wow. Like, even I just went back the other day and I was watching some more Clipper games and I hear those guys a lot. I hear Mike bring a lot on there.
Oh, yeah. Well, Mike Smith and Ralph Lawler, who were legendary for us when we were there with the Clippers. Yeah.
Yes. But then even when we had ESPN games, like hearing Mike Breen, hearing Tirico and hearing like Doris and all these people. And now we're like sitting next to them calling games. Like, what's better than that? Like, what truly is better than that?
I always say, man, RJ and I talk about this all the time. We are massive, and I know you are too. We are massive NBA fans. We are massive hoops junkies. Like, if there's one thing that we all have been addicted to and obsessed with, it's been the game of basketball. And now we get paid to sit courtside and talk about the game we love. How cool is that, dude? We're so
like, we pay for this? Like, for real?
It's the greatest job besides being an NBA player. I want to ask you about just calling your first game.
Yes.
And sort of the process for you. Any nerves, any just memorable sort of moments. I have one from my very first game I called, but just like you sort of like not even easing into this, right?
Yeah.
With calling games, just getting kind of thrown into the fire.
It was unbelievable because the prep is totally different. So studio at TNT, we don't have meetings. Like, there's no meetings. If the show starts at 7:00, we're walking on set at 6:58. Shaq may come in at 7:02. You never know. But it's just like, it's so free flowing. With this, you have T-High, shout out to him, and Aaron, those guys like, okay, it's going to run like this. This is going to be the opening. This is going to be, what's your thoughts on this? What's your thoughts on this adjustment? It's a totally different process. But it's like you're living in real time. Like, studio happens, we're watching the game, first half, okay, now we're going to, analyze what we just saw. In game, a moment can move you. And what I mean by that is my first game calling with Kevin and Reggie, I'm watching Victor Wembanyama. And it's my first time seeing him in person. It's in Atlanta on Martin Luther King Day. And he has one of those runs where he blocks a shot, rebounds, dunks, hits a three, back to back to back to back. And I remember saying, and it just came out, Wembanyama's the creative player that creative players would create. And Reggie's like, what? He said, say it again. I said, well, think about it. If LeBron and KD were playing 2K, those two in particular are playing 2K and they're creating a player. I want a player 7'4". I want him to run like a gazelle. I want him to block every shot. I want step back threes. And they were like, wow. And it just came out. Like, oh, you're right. We're fans, right? So that energy was there as a fan, even though I was calling the game. That's a moment I'll never forget.
You've had some good one-liners. I'm not going to lie. There's a
Hennessy
certain
tweeted about Hennessy, but yeah, that Hennessy tweeted out their favorite J. Cross lines. So I was like, okay, I did something good.
No, you've done well. You've done well with the one-liners. I don't have that in my repertoire as a broadcaster. I just don't. I feel like there's certain people. And I'm not saying I've worked with any of these people, but I listen to a lot of games. And
sure,
there are certain people that have these iconic sort of one-liners or catchphrases. Yeah. And I remember when I started, I was like, you know what? I was like, I have to be me. Yeah. That's not me. That's not me. Your shit is so creative in the moment. You know what? In some ways, I'm thinking about this right now. In some ways, you as a broadcaster is a reflection of you as a player.
You just take it out. That's why our chemistry is the way it is. When you finish talking, I was going to say, JJ, now they're just seeing my mind work how it did when I was playing basketball. This is just a different way to express myself. It literally is mirror images of how I play. You know what the hell I was going to do. I didn't know what I was going to do. I didn't know what I'm going to say sometimes. And I think it's just me up there, though. And that's the cool thing about it. Like, I didn't lose me in this whole process. And you're right. Like, dang, you nailed it. Because that's literally what I was about to say.
Yeah. I said a few minutes ago, I said, what we get to do in calling games is like the greatest thing ever. Besides being an NBA player. And you and I haven't really talked about this. What do you miss the most? Because I know you still hoop, and I know you're still around the game. Like me, we're involved with our kids' lives in terms of their basketball existence. What do you miss the most about playing in the NBA?
The performance piece of it. Like I said, I literally was just watching 2 hours of our old stuff. I'm like, damn, we were really good. But just the reactions of the crowd, the reactions of your teammates, the reaction of the opposite bench. Because now when I'm watching highlights and stuff now I'm looking at the opposite bench to see their reaction. Like, dang, they lived this in real time. We may not have seen their face when, you hit the 3-pointer against the Blazers when Chris threw it through his legs to win it or whatever. Like, I missed the performance piece. It felt like we were on stage. It literally felt like we were going to a concert and we were watching our favorite artists perform our favorite song that took us back to a certain memory. And that piece of it, of performing and not knowing, but having everybody on the edge of their seat and a big moment and coming through with a big play, I think I miss that more than anything else. That adrenaline that it gives you can't duplicate that.
I have a follow-up to that, but as you're talking there, I think what's always been remarkable to me, you and I have had an incredible friendship for 10 years.
Yeah. Yes.
We are such different basketball players, and the way we both worked hard and we both were professional, but the way that we sort of approached the game was so different. I think there's a nature of, like, if you and I were to get into a rap battle, and no, listen, if you and I were to get into a rap battle, hold on, we knew the beat ahead of time. We knew the beat ahead of time. I would spend hours and hours writing lines, thinking about what kind of lines is Jamal going to say, right? What kind of lines is Jamal going to say? And I'd write everything out, and I would be so prepared in a very different way. Now, you may listen to the beat, and you may go in your head, and you might think of a couple lines, but there's something about, in the same way that it's reflected in your broadcasting career, there's something about your spontaneity that I never had as a player, right? And it's remarkable that's such a difference in the way we played basketball.
It is, but it's very to who we are as people. You're very organized. I remember something, I never told you this. I remember something you said. You're talking to us about, I think it was like billionaires. And you were like, they simplify their life to a point where they don't have to go in their closet and have 50 million shirts. Like, everything is organized. They keep it simple. They know exactly who they are. And maybe I'm paraphrasing, so you can correct me if I'm wrong, but it's something to that degree. And you're so organized. It goes back to when Rich was like, hey, we have a conditioning test. We got to run 6 6s. We run, I think, 5, and we get the number we needed not to run the 6. And you're like, hell no, we're not doing that. We're doing 6. This is what it is. And I'm like, who is this dude? This is the guy at Duke that I was like, hold up. I'm a Michigan guy. I'm like, hold up. But getting to know you in our friendship, and that's who you are. And I'm the opposite. Like, you're right. I would hear a beat. I may say a couple lines. I'm like, it'll just come to me. I'll freestyle. Don't worry. It'll be all right. And we both want the same result in the end. It's just a different approach. And that's what's so cool about our friendship as well.
I didn't prepare for that conditioning test to only run 5. Motherfucker, no. I was like, Rich, I didn't do weeks of training to get to the point where I could run 6 6s in 31 seconds with a 1-to-1 rest ratio. I didn't get to that point to only run 5. Fuck that. We're running 6. No, we are this close to crowning an NBA champ, and with the action heating up on the court, it's even hotter at DraftKings Sportsbook, an official sports betting partner of the NBA. With same-game parlays, live betting, odds boost, and so much more, don't miss out as the NBA postseason winds down. And if you're new to DraftKings, you got to check this out. New customers bet $5 to get $150 in bonus bets instantly. Download the DraftKings Sportsbook app now and use code JJ. That's code JJ for new customers to get $150 in bonus bets when you bet just $5. Only on DraftKings. The crown is yours. Gambling problem? Call 1-800-GAMBLER, or in West Virginia, visit www.1800gambler.net. In New York, call 877-8-HOPE-NY or text HOPE-NY 467-369. In Connecticut, help is available for problem gambling. Call 888-789-7777 or visit ccpg.org. Please play responsibly. On behalf of Boot Hill Casino and Resort in Kansas, 21 plus, age varies by jurisdiction, void in Ontario. Bonus bets expire 168 hours after issuance. See dkng.co/bball for eligibility and deposit restrictions, terms, and responsible gaming resources.
You brought up Doc, and immediately when you brought up Doc, I just was watching this earlier. My mind went to Lawrence Fishburne. How many episodes of Clipped have you watched?
Oh my gosh. All right.
Honestly.
So I'll be honest with you.
All right.
So I watched most of the first episode.
Okay.
And I it's weird to say this because there's a very coiffed haired white dude that plays me.
My hair on there, but yeah, go ahead.
I'll get to your hair in a second. And I couldn't get emotionally invested. So I haven't seen beyond like the first, 30 minutes of the first episode. But people have been sending me clips. And it is wild.
It's wild.
How many episodes have you watched?
I watched 2. I can't wait to watch 3. It's hilarious because some things I remember and some things like that did not happen, but I understand it's entertainment. But my hair, I've never used a piece of spray paint in my life. Why do they have my hair looking like that?
You've always had a great hairline, honestly. You got sideburns. You got like a full thing with sideburns. You've always had a little fade here.
Like what's going on here? But it's entertaining and it's been funny to watch.
What do you think is the worst representation of a player?
On there?
Like in terms of how the actor looks.
Oh, yeah.
And how the player actually looked at the time.
Steph Curry's a little off on there.
A little off.
Off. I'm being nice here. A little off. Just a little. Steph got clipped. I wasn't a great representation. CP is a little shorter than I remember.
CP is not in shape. The CP in clipped is not in shape.
Yeah, I don't know what CP that is, but Cliff wasn't even looking like that. Cliff Paul, I don't know who that is, but like, I don't know. What about George? What do you got?
I have a real problem with the Blake character. I have a real problem with the Blake character.
Yeah. What's your biggest? Yeah.
The biggest issue is Blake has a large, and he's got great bone structure. He's always had great bone structure. He's got a large head, and his character has a smaller pea-sized head. And it's just like Blake was such a larger than life personality, and he still is. Like he's still one of my closest friends, but it just like there's something physically about that character that I just can't wrap my head around. Even however they portray him, which whatever. Also, the timeline's all messed up. Can I say one thing real quick? I just want to say one thing real quick. There's one part of about episode 1 that is way off, which is we go to the white party. Right?
Never been to the white party.
I never went to the white party because the white party happened before I signed.
Yes, it did.
The white party, that whole thing with like Blake at the white party, that was before I was ever there. That was like when Blake was drafted. If we're going by the actual timeline. So that's one thing. And in the clips I've seen, the undressing that Doc had with the corny jokes, Big Baby, Jenny Craig, Big Baby wasn't even on the team that year. Like I don't even he wasn't even on the team that year. So there's an erroneous take. There's stuff he was saying, like there was never any of that. And then we never did Shibuya on the fucking bus where we're rapping.
You guys are rapping Shibuya? I'm like, what? What are you talking about? No, that never happened. Ever.
The fact that they almost had me saying a word, like what?
Oh yeah, they almost had you. They almost had you. Now I was like, and some of it's entertaining. Like I remember vividly when Sterling came in the locker room. I remember it vividly. But he didn't get kicked out. And he did. He only came one time in the 5 years I was there. And he came with a group of people, and he left when he left. But it wasn't as dramatic as they made it seem. He came in singing Hip Hip Hooray, as a matter of fact. The coach is great. Hip Hip Hooray. That's what he did. And that was like, he said a couple things to a couple people, and that was it.
See, was that with Doc or with Vinny when he came in the locker room?
You're right. That may have been with Vinny.
Because I was going to say,
Vinny, right.
only interaction with Donald Sterling was, of course, the some of the stuff with my free agency was actually accurate.
Right.
We had a charity golf tournament at in Palos Verdes at the Trump course there,
yep.
And that was the only interaction I ever had with him. This was after he tried to cancel my deal because he woke up and decided he didn't want to sign a white player. And I went up to him just to say hello. And I said, "Hey, Mr. Sterling, nice to meet you." And he said, "Hey, JJ, I've heard a lot about you." And that was the only words that I ever spoke to him.
That was the only interaction you've ever had with him ever.
He never came in a locker room. We had never talked to him. Yeah.
Wow. Yeah, we didn't talk. Like, I'll talk to him one time or two times in 5 years, literally.
Yeah. All right, let's get to some basketball stuff that doesn't involve the Clippers or broadcasting. Just finished game 3. I know you watched it. I have a lot of like big picture takeaways. The series is not over. I'm not saying Boston is guaranteed to win, but historically speaking, they're pretty much guaranteed to win this series.
Right.
For Dallas to get back in and make it interesting, like in your opinion, what do they have to do? Because we've done this prior to the series. We did it after game 1. We did it after game 2. We did it today with Richard going into game 3. It feels like Boston is clearly the better team. And I want to expound on that point in a second, but it feels like it's a little bit of a mismatch.
It is a mismatch. And this is why it's not a mismatch why people think. To me, when I saw it going into it, I thought it was going to be Dallas in 6. What I didn't know was Missoula was going to switch the pick and roll on Luka and not blitz it and not just give them the answer. And he bring everybody else in the game by having the advantage. 2 people on him, then playing 4-on-3 on the backside, right? So now they got the lob threat. They had Kyrie getting open threes in front of the Minnesota's bench because they were doubling at that time. What they've done, what Boston has done, is said, okay, we're going to switch pick and roll. And when we switch, nobody helped. So now we're going to make him go to the lane and finish. And as you know, and as I know, that takes so much more energy versus shooting step back threes, right? And now he's taking the others out the game. So, okay, Luka, you may get 35. For Luka Doncic to have 1 assist in the first game told you everything you need to know. They took everybody else out. Kyrie got the shots he wanted to get. But even if Kyrie got 30 that game, that wouldn't have been enough to beat them. Because, okay, you have Tatum being the best player 3 days out the week. You have Brown being the best player 2 or 3 days out the week. Then White, Porzingis, or anybody else, Holiday can be the best player. But I think Missoula's scheme of doing that took away Dallas's great strength. And that's why after game 1, I believe Jay Kidd may have recognized that as well and said, okay, well, Brown's the best player. We got to do something because what they're doing right now, I'm not sure we can counter without bringing the other guys into the game. Their strength is the Liveleys and the Washingtons, those guys hitting timely shots, getting dunks. So unless they can get stops enough to get in transition to bring those other guys into the game, it's going to be really tough for them to fight back. And I said this before, once I saw the first game.
They've been able to generate good threes. They were 6 for 23 in game 2 on open threes. They shot 26% overall. They started, I know at halftime, they were 9 for 27 from 3. And then in the third quarter, they go 5 of 11 and they make their first 2. So I know with Joe, it's like, as long as we're generating the offensive possessions we want, and as long as time and score dictates it, we're willing to live with 2-point shots.
Yes.
I said this on the broadcast today. It was an 18-point lead. Luka had a clear side ISO on Peyton Pritchard and just used his weight and size to overpower him. And he turned and made like basically the layups that we used to make in high school. Like no resistance, right?
Huh?
And there was not a single guy on Boston that was like, I'm going to go help. Because, all right, if we give up a 3, now it's 15, not 16, right? I think the math component to game planning for Joe, Missoula ball, whatever you want to call it, he's very thoughtful about it. He's not, and it's interesting because I've talked to him a ton, and we get the sounds of the game, the wired stuff, and you can see it in real time. He's not beholden to analytics, right? I've asked him about with Tatum and Jaylen Brown. I'm like, how much are you coaching them on the ISO mid-range pull-up? That has to be part of their game, right? That has to be part of their game. As long as we're still generating threes, as long as we're still getting paint touches and kickouts, I'm okay with that, right? It's not this strict thing that we've seen with some teams. I think of the Rockets, where it was like literally Harden ignored his mid-range shot for like 2 years and only shot layups and threes. Mm-hmm. They still allow the freedom to just play basketball. But I think the game plan defensively, to your point, I think has been the biggest thing. Kyrie, by the way, was awesome tonight. But mathematically, again, 28 shots on 35 points on 28 shots, and Boston again generated over 43s. Missoula's willing to live in that world.
Well, that world's going to favor them. If you think about it, even going back to last year, right, when they were playing Miami, they almost sold out to that as well. That's who they are. Like, they're going to take their mid-ranges with the right guys taking them, but they're going to take their threes as well. And I think this is the perfect, just like I think Dallas was the perfect, or Minnesota was the perfect matchup for Dallas to run that drop coverage. And, okay, you keep your great guards in rhythm with Luka and Kyrie, and now you're blitzing, now they have advantage. This is just as bad as a mismatch with the way they're playing it. Like, to your point, he gets Pritchard. Any other thing is, code red, everybody help. They're like, no, we're going to sell out to this. Go get the 2. We'll get it back. And over time, with you using that energy to continue to do that every single time, if you go get 22s, that's a different energy than 13 threes, right? If you make the 2. But it's a masterful job he's doing. And that's why I think he's been Boston's MVP, right? Him and his staff, they've done an unbelievable job with this scheme.
All right, here's a question I have for you. Let's assume for a second that Boston closes this out in the next couple games. All right, in the next couple games. I think if it goes 6 back to Dallas, it gets interesting. Certainly if there's a game 7, like, it's super interesting. But let's assume it goes 4 or 5.
Okay.
Boston right now on the season, including playoffs, is 79-20. They're 15-2 in the playoffs. They have, I think, the top 5 or 6 point differential, top 5 or 6 net rating all time in the regular season. Why do you think people are so quick to dismiss this Boston Celtics team as an all-time team?
That's a great question. I think they wouldn't say they're all-time yet just because they're young. Like, they're really, really young, and it's hard to say, okay, Tatum's been in the finals twice now, Brown's been twice now. Don't forget, just a few years ago, people were like, break them up. They're not good. And I'm like, are they crazy? But to see, like, they've been to the finals now at an early age. If Boston goes on to win this thing, and Tatum, we're going to look at Tatum differently. We're going to see all the things he has done and accomplished already at this tender age, 26 or 25 or whatever he is. That's why I think people will look at it. And we're in a time now where everything's happening like this. Like, I was just on Twitter fighting with people. Like, they're like, Tatum's not bringing it. I'm like, if his team wasn't up 2-0, I can understand it. But he's averaging 17, 10, and 8. Yeah, he's not shooting well, but they're up 2-0. The name of the game is to win the game. And going back, just hit me again, going back to what you said, for Dallas to have a chance to get back in this, they have to keep the game close. Because what scared me about Boston all time and all year was they're almost like Mike Tyson. They're up 15, the ball's hopping, it's moving fast, you're running out of defenders. When it gets tight, they slow down and start going a lot of one-on-one. And they look like 2 different teams. And so with that, that's Dallas's only chance. That's their only chance all year, is to beat them, is to keep the game close and hope that they go one-on-one so much that it hurts them.
We saw tonight, let's take the context out of the third quarter run and then Dallas's comeback. And let's take the context of, hey, this is the moment that we have all talked about. Before the series, we said, hey, if it's late game and it's clutch time, Dallas has the advantage. Now, Luka fouled out early in clutch time. I get that. Boston's execution, there were some stagnant possessions with Tatum ISOs and what I would think are tough, bad shots. But Jaylen Brown, Derrick White, Jrue Holiday, all making plays. That's been consistent throughout the season. You look at Jaylen Brown, even Porzingis, who didn't play tonight. Jaylen Brown, Porzingis, Jrue Holiday, Derrick White, late game have been excellent. The Celtics clutch rating, playoffs, regular season, has been excellent. Offense, defense, whatever. There's still those possessions where we scratch our head and say, oh, that wasn't great. So I think some of it is the aesthetics of late game. Some of it is, this is why I think they're so great, but it's why I think some people can't quite grasp them, is they do play a different way. You brought up the cross matches. They've been like this all season. They don't match up by position. And some of that is because they have the personnel to do it, right? Jrue Holiday has guarded every freaking position in volume the whole season, right? You think Jaylen Brown's going to guard this guy? No, he's going to guard this guy. You think Tatum's going to guard? No, he's going to guard this guy. So defensively, they do things to muck it up a little bit. Offensively, I think because of the volume of three-point shooting, the amount of ISO frequency, the amount of post-up frequency, they look different. When they're really rolling and the ball's moving and it's swing, 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 it's like that's as beautiful as basketball can look. But then aesthetically, they have these moments where it's not good. And I think that's some of it. The other point I would make is when we think about the greatest teams of all time, we are talking about all-timers and clear 1A superstars that are attached to those teams. I think Tatum he's made 3 first-team All-NBAs in a row, 2 of which came by position. So he was, for 2 years, one of the 2 best forwards in the NBA. Mm-hmm. But people don't want to give him credit as like a real tier 1, Michael, Kobe, Luka, Jokic, whatever, Kawhi, Steph, all those guys, right? And I think that's fair. I think it's okay to say that. So because they don't have that guy, we're quick to dismiss them. I would make the argument in terms of a team and the collective, and Doris has talked about this a bunch during the finals, in terms of a collective and a team, this is like as good as it gets in the NBA. A great example of that would be the 14 Spurs team that they came back from the disappointment of 13 and blitzed the Heat in the finals and won 4-1. Like that was about the team. So yes, maybe like at the very top, it's not the best we've ever seen, but in terms of the team, this is as good as it gets in basketball.
For sure. And to that Spurs point you just made, they were playing like beautiful basketball for 99% of the game. So it was easy to embrace, right? Everybody's touching the ball. Tim Duncan, we know, is a clear number 1, the best power forward of all time, one of the best players of all time. But he did that over time. I'm not sure we were saying, the 99 Spurs team was an all-time great because he was early in his career. But that 14 team was ridiculous. And go back to 13 when they lost, and Tim Duncan's like, we'll be back next year and we'll get the job done. Like, so they were like something different. This Boston Celtics team, I think with the youth, I think we'll appreciate them if they can go 4-0 and, all those things a little bit later on. But to your point, it's still discussion. Where's this guy in the all-time? Where's he at in today's game? Where's this person at? But I don't think they care right now, to be honest with you. And I think what else they did was they got more mature when they got Holiday, White, and Porzingis. Like, besides the talent, they got more mature. So now the possessions they had when they went to the finals before, 5 minutes left in the game, when they played Golden State, they may have 2 or 3 bad turnovers in a row. Now it may just be 1. And maybe some of that's their experience of Brown and Tatum going through that and those younger guys. But it's also Holiday, hey, fellas, and they know he's a champion. They know he plays with no agenda but to win. Derrick White, hey, fellas, this moment right here, we have to get a good one. Just hearing that. We know how important you were that, your second half of your career. I try to be that. We know how important that is just to have that vet say something to trigger something and just change the tide of where things are going. So, no, they may not appreciate them right now, but honestly, I don't think they care because honestly, they may feel like, you know what, if we win this one, we can do this for the next 2 or 3 years. And then people will have to give us our just due.
I hate making predictions. I really do.
You're about to make one?
No, I'm not going to make one. I think there's always receipts on predictions, right? And the one thing you and I have both learned in playing in the NBA and being around this level of the sport for so long is like, you don't really know what the main problem you have to solve until at least a game, sometimes maybe 2 games. And it's hard to make predictions. And a number of people, I live online, so the number of people were like,
yes, you do.
Yeah. They were like, yeah, the Mavs in 6, Mavs in 5, right? I mean, Nick Wright, he said the Celtics record and point differential say they're an all-time team. The eye test says they are not close to that. We shall see what's what here in 10 days. Mavs in 5. And obviously Nick is wrong, like a number of other people. And I think and I keep saying this, the problem with the predictions and the discourse around this Celtics team is that too much of it is based on past performances. And we haven't actually, we collectively, I'm not saying me, I'm not going to put myself in that. We collectively have not witnessed what we've watched this year and recognized just how fucking good this team is. You brought up Jrue and Derrick. No agenda. They're 2 guys that I'm like, if you're a GM, you're like, I just want those guys on my team.
Period.
I want those guys on my team. They are so good. Joe always says, he's like, they're just normal. They're normal. I played with Jrue. I know Derrick a little bit, but they're just normal guys who compete and love to win. And to me, I said this, I remember on the very first Celtics game I did this year, which was a 76ers game. I think it was their first preseason game of the year. I said, with the addition of Jrue Holiday, they have the best defensive backcourt in the NBA. I think that's accurate. I think that's been played out over this year. I want to ask you a question because I don't know if you had a vote this year, but I had a vote all NBA defense, right? Versus who are the best defenders in the NBA.
That is definitely a different.
It's two different things, right? All NBA defense, I'm taking into account your team's record. I'm taking into account your team's defensive rating. I'm taking into account your rating when you're on the court versus your team's defensive rating. I'm taking into account analytics, all that stuff. There's something about the eye test and watching certain guys where you're like, that's one of the best defensive players in the world. Like you think about a guy like Lou Dort, who like rarely concedes the switch.
I wish I could have played against Dort because, and that's with great respect, because
No, you don't. I remember the first game I played against Dort, and I was like, this guy's different.
No, he's so different. And that's why I'm saying it with such respect and regard. Most defenders have like quick hands or quick feet, or they're strong. He's a combination of all of them. And he has a certain pride he takes. We call it some of the series when they played New Orleans. There was a certain pride that he took defensively where he wasn't switching, where he was just being an irritant. And the way I always looked at great defenders when I was playing against them was, which defender could have me in thought the most? Where I would think like, oh shit, like, where's this dude at? Is this move going to work? Like the ones who had me in thought the most, and he seems like he would have been one of those guys.
It takes the best to set the standard. They don't make the easy passes or take the quickest route. They level up the entire playing field. Steph Curry brings tactical, strategic thinking to the game and has innovated the way the game of basketball has been played. He constantly puts pressure on the defense by sprinting behind screens and through the paint, looking for just a slither of separation to receive a pass and get his shot off. He seems to see more of the game, processing every sensory input, even in the most stressful situations, allowing him to exploit opponents' positioning to create shots, find passing lanes, and exploit turnovers. Steph Curry is simply one of the best. And if you enjoy watching the best, you'll enjoy driving the best in a standard-setting BMW. Luxury meets power to create a whole new driving experience. Be the best. Set the standard. BMW, the ultimate driving machine. I got two more things. Do you have any strong opinions on this whole passing of the torch, next generation conversation? If you don't, let's not do it.
As far as what? Give me the context.
All right, so this is the sixth straight different champion.
Okay.
For a long time, there were 5 best players on the best team. Last year, Jokic made it 6. Tatum or Brown, depending on how you look at him, and I think it's Tatum, but I also think Brown is fucking awesome. So you throw Brown in there if you want. This year, potentially going to make it 7, even if Dallas comes back and does the improbable. Luka or Kyrie, right? That makes it 7. Feels like there's more parity. It feels like the greatest players from our generation are in the last innings, still playing at an unbelievable level, but in the last innings.
For sure.
And we're in this like incredible transition period in the NBA where the talent is spread out. And I think it's phenomenal, not only for the league, but for the game of basketball globally.
It is phenomenal. And we're actually lucky and blessed to have Tatum, Brown, Luka, Wemby, SGA, Anthony Edwards, like all these young stars, because if you think about it, like Durant, LeBron, Steph, we have more time than we've had with them than we'll have with them going forward. And when you lose Michael and you get Kobe, right, and Shaq, and then they're gone. Now you get LeBron. And now, he's rolling for a long time being the face and carrying the league. And now he had this new group of stars. And I think what's really cool about the new group of stars is they're accepting the responsibility of being that. I'm not saying they're playing for that, but they're accepting like, okay, it's our turn to not only be the face of the league, but to kind of help grow the game. So the responsibility piece of it, the responsibility that comes with, hey, we have to take this trip over here to play a game over here. Hey, we have to do this, this, and that. It's so much more to it than just showing up for the game, especially when you're one of those dudes. So as a group, we're very, very blessed because every sport doesn't get that. Sometimes they hit a rough patch where they're searching for it, they're trying to create it. This is like totally, totally different. And I won't say any names, but I've talked to a couple of the younger stars in the league, and their perspective on how they want to grow the game is like beyond me. So I think we're very blessed in that regard to have this in this transitional period because, who knows if we're going to see Steph, KD, or LeBron in the finals again. And those are the best players of our generation and all-time greats, right? Like we're blessed to have the gold rush of these guys who accepted not only being the face, but accepting pushing the game forward.
Your comment made me think of something that Mike Breen said to me today. Your comment about the responsibility and the growth of the game. He said to me, when you think about the people in the history of basketball that have had the biggest impact on the game, Jerry West is on that list. He's on that list. And we went through, and I'm not trying to create any controversy, but we named, I would say 12 to 15 people, including Dr. Naismith, who invented the game of basketball, right?
Okay.
John Wooden, you put him on there. I don't want to go through everybody because I'll leave somebody off and somebody will be mad.
Right.
Let's say there were 12 to 15. Maybe it's 20. I don't know. In the history of the sport, there's maybe a dozen to 24 people that have had the biggest impact on the game. And specifically with Steph and LeBron, those two guys are on that list. It's going to be fucking awesome and fun to watch to see this generation who ends up making that list of players, right? Because it's going to be somebody. Somebody's going to end up having an impact that when we really talk about a legacy, it's a Jerry West. When we really talk about a legacy, it's a Red Auerbach. It's a Michael Jordan. It's a Kobe, right? Somebody in today's generation is going to have that impact. And it's going to be fun to watch.
It's going to be unbelievable to watch. It will be somebody. And I can guarantee you this, one thing is for sure, that person or two, whoever it is, will go and reach out and seek the counsel of those guys you said, the same way that LeBron did Magic or Jordan, the same way Kobe did Jordan and Dr. J and Jerry West, rest in peace, and all these guys. And Steph has done it as well. You can't become a great teacher, or you can't become a great leader if you weren't a great soldier. And I'm saying that in the most respectful way, because right now there's soldiers coming up, but these guys are LeBrons. And kudos to LeBron and Steph and these guys and the KDs, because they're making themselves available for this next generation.
Yeah.
Right.
That was the coolest thing about Kobe at the end of his career and after he retired, was just making himself available to the young guys coming up. So cool. Because they understand it's bigger than just them. Right. And so Kobe was giving those guys at Team USA, and you were there for USA at some of that, but to see and seek the knowledge, and he was given that knowledge. Some people are selfish and they try to keep all that for themselves. No, you got it. It's like having a baton. You run a race. I ran my 100. Here's yours. Here's a baton. Here's all the knowledge you need. Here's everything. You have the keys to the kingdom to help grow this game forward. And someone will do that, and he'll go see those guys first. All right. Before I let you go, I don't think I've ever asked you this. I'm sure you've been asked this before. You can be as brief or as elongated as possible. I'm just going to give you the floor here. Okay. You have one of my favorite sort of, there's a bunch out there, but you have one of my favorite mixtapes in terms of your career highlights. Okay. In your mind, the top 3 plays of your career. The top 3 plays of your career. Nobody saw because I kept the best moves. Mic drop.